Hi, my name is Michael Sahno. I'm Jewish and I love Israel. So if you love Israel, if you love being Jewish, or if you have an unwavering connection to the land of Israel, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the 12 Cities in Israel podcast. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the 12 Cities in Israel podcast, the only positive podcast about the people, the food, the culture, and the history, apparently, of the state of Israel. If this is your first time watching, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. And if you want to take us with you, you can always find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and on Spotify. And we'd like to tell you that this episode was brought to you by the 12 Cities in Israel Modern Hebrew Flashcards. The best flashcard set on the market, the best way to learn Hebrew or to brush up on those Hebrew skills. And they're available on Amazon, and they're free if you have Kindle Unlimited. All right, we'll have more on that later in the episode. All right, we are moving on to our next of the 12 cities in Israel, as if you've been listening to the past few episodes. Our first one was Beersheba. We went over Beersheba, the history and the modern city. We went over Akko, the history and the modern city. I'm going to tell you, the Akko one, the modern city, I wasn't as excited about that episode. I did a lot of reading. I'm going to try to bring a little more of me through in this one as we talk about Ashkelon. All right, Ashkelon is an amazing city, and since this is the first part one, we're going to be going over the history. I am going to be doing a lot of reading because Ashkelon has an amazing history. Wow, just like Akko, just like all of these 12 cities, with the exception of very few, they have colorful and vibrant histories. All right, so let's start off. It is located in the southern district of Israel on the Mediterranean coast, and it's about 30 miles south of Tel Aviv. The ancient seaport of Ashkelon dates all the way back to the Neolithic age. Its history has had the ancient Egyptians, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Hasmoneans, the Romans, the Arabs, and the Crusaders, all calling it their own, with the Mamluks eventually destroying it in 1270. Ooh, spoiler alert. Sorry about that. This all changed, though, in 1953 with the consolidation of several neighboring villages into the newly formed city of Ashkelon. And the state of Israel brought it back into the world. And as of 2019, Ashkelon is the third largest city in Israel's southern district. And it has some of the most amazing beaches. Peter Madeira, I'm going to have a sip of coffee. This is for you. L'chaim. All right, so that's the intro. That just lets you know a little bit about the city of Ashkelon and where we're going to. As you probably noted from all of the names of all of the civilizations that I read out. Holy junk, this place covers so much history. But we're going to breeze through it. I'm going to give you the highlights. That's why you come to me. What's up? All right, so Ashkelon goes all the way back to the Neolithic age. We're talking Stone Age. Well, is that Stone Age? Neolithic age? Probably. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't have my ages there. But Ashkelon dates all the way back to the Neolithic age and was discovered and excavated in 1954 by French archaeologists. Dude, what is going on with me? It's the Hebrew by French archaeologist Jean Perrault, and excavations were also undertaken between 1997 and 1998 by Joseph Garfinkel, in conjunction with Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. At the site, they found, during all of the excavations, they found over 100 fireplaces and hearths, as well as a bunch of pits, like burning pits and stuff like that, but no tangible architecture, with the exception of one wall. That attests, we're going to talk about total destruction towards the end, and why there was only one wall. Layered atop one another, subsequent phases of occupation have been found at the site with sterile layers of sea sand in between them, thus indicating that during this era, Ashkelon was primarily occupied on a seasonal basis. So basically, I don't know which seasons they were. It didn't really say the seasonal cycle of the Neolithic people in Ashkelon, but basically what would happen is, as the seasons would change, they would exit the site, and when the season turned back to the one where they would inhabit it, they would come back. Boom, there you go. So now, moving out of the Neolithic age for Ashkelon into the Bronze Age and the Canaanite era. Ooh, conflict. All right. Oh, I got something in my eye. It's making me twitch. Hold on. Now, during, geez, and Pete, it went right up into my contact. Sorry about that. Sorry. Hold on. Going back to the Bronze Age and the Canaanite era. So during the Middle Bronze Age, which was 2000 to 1550 BCE, Ashkelon became a large walled city of about 15,000 people, and it was built on an outcropping of sandstone with its own underground water supply. It was such a prominent location that Ashkelon was mentioned in what are called the Egyptian execration texts, which are texts that listed the enemies of the pharaoh from the Egyptian 11th dynasty, which reigned from 2130 to 1991 BCE. And in it, the city was referred to as Askanu, with a Q. So Ashkelon was also referenced in the Amarna letters, which were circa 1350 BCE, which were correspondences between the Egyptian and Canaanite kingdoms about diplomatic and administrative affairs. These letters were between King Kidia of Ashkelon, which was called in the letters Askaluna, so a little bit different. Askuna to Askaluna. So they were between King Yidia of Askaluna and the Egyptian pharaoh. Found in the ruins from this era was a small ceramic tabernacle with a cast bronze statuette of a bull calf. Which originally had been covered in silver. This item is thought to be associated with the worship of the Canaanite gods El and Baal. So here we have actual, what do you call it? Archaeological evidence of these Canaanite religions, which I think is pretty fascinating because there's not really much there's a lot that's known through the biblical record, but to have the archaeological evidence to buttress that written information is pretty phenomenal, I think. Alrighty, so out of the Bronze Age and the Canaanite era into Ashkelon's Philistine era. So we are covering everything. Ashkelon was walked upon by so many different people. So the Canaanites who lived in Ashkelon were then conquered by the Philistines in approximately 1150 BCE. There is evidence of Greek cultural influence in Philistine art and architecture found in Ashkelon. And that is based on references found in Mycenae, Greece, from digs there, archaeological digs there, thus lending credence to the hypothesis that the Philistines were linked to the sea peoples that were recorded as warring with cultures throughout the eastern Mediterranean region. So I don't know if a lot of you know this, but nobody really knows who the Philistines were, which is really interesting. So we have this written record, not just in the Bible, but also in Egyptian records, in ancient Turkic records, whoever was there, in the records of Crete and all this. Or is it Crete? I don't know if it's Crete. But we have records of the Philistines or the sea peoples. And here we have reference that there is a link between the Mycenaean Greeks and the Philistines. Oh, interesting. So Ashkelon was also one of the 5 Philistine cities that were constantly at war with the Israelites. The kingdom of Israel, and eventually the kingdom of Judah, because the kingdom of Israel collapsed under the Assyrians, and a lot of the people from the kingdom of Israel came to the kingdom of Judah, which is also why there's dual narratives in the Bible. Didn't know that. That's another total episode, but that's just interesting. Ashkelon is also mentioned by the chronicler Herodotus, who wrote about the greatness and the history of the city's temple to Venus, or Temple of Venus. So that's pretty cool. That's like having your name mentioned for, let's say you were in Little League and you threw the biggest pitch streak on record, and you were in the New York Times. That's what that's like. So it's pretty cool. Herodotus. Boom. Ashkelon. Finally, in 604 BCE, Philistine Ashkelon and the Philistines themselves came to an end when Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II destroyed the city and took the population with them back to Babylon. Sound familiar? So it wasn't just us that happened to. We weren't the only ones that got dragged to Babylon. It was also the Philistines. So that's where the Philistines went. So this there is an argument that the residents of the area are the historical Philistines, and that's where the name Palestine comes from. And I don't know about the etymology of Palestine. I know part of it, and that's the Romans named it Palestina, something Palestina. And that could be because of the Philistines who were there. But by the time the Romans got there, the Philistines were no longer a people. They had been dispersed and their culture was lost during the Babylonian exile. Crazy. Now you know this. What's up, Michael? You're welcome. I give you this information free of charge. All right. Now, I'm going to have another sip of coffee. Hold on just one sec. All right, so we're moving out of the Philistine era into the Persians, then the Greeks. So the city was rebuilt and existed under Persian influence. I don't have the information on who rebuilt it. I don't know if it was actually under the Persian Empire, but it was influenced culturally by the Persians until Ashkelon became part of the empire of Alexander the Great. In the 4th century BCE. Now, during the seminal reign of Alexander the Great, and on through both the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, Ashkelon remained an important and strategic seaport for the Hellenistic Empire. So we noticed this about Akko, that these coastal port cities in what would become Israel were important crossroads for the region, for trade, military, everything. And Ashkelon was one of these for the Hellenistic empires. So now we're moving on to the Hasmoneans, to the Romans. I told you I was going to move quickly through this. Now, while not directly under the control of the Hasmonean kingdom, in the second and the first century BCE, Ashkelon did maintain trade and good diplomatic relations with the Hasmonean monarchs, but the Hasmonean monarchs did have some control over the city of Ashkelon, as is evidenced that during the reign of the Hasmonean queen Salome Alexandra, who reigned from 76 to 67 BCE. So we're coming closer to CE, Common Era. The court, during this time, the court of Simeon ben Shetak, sentenced 80 women with the charge of sorcery. So they have no control over Ashkelon, but apparently Simeon ben Shetak, at the behest, I'm assuming, of Queen Salome Alexandra, sentenced 80 women to death. Now, this then led to the living relatives of those accused of sorcery to accuse Ben Shetak's son of a crime with a punishment also requiring execution, and this execution was carried out. It isn't clear that Ben Shetak's son actually did anything. This seems to be revenge, but this occurred. Crazy. Whoa. Violent history. But it was a different time. I'm not making excuses for the behavior, but I'm also not relativizing in terms of saying, well, that's just unacceptable, because we're talking about kings, we're talking about queens, we're talking about courts that have different standards than we have today. So although it is shocking, we see many shocking things from this time. And it's sad. Boom. In 30 BCE, Herod the Great comes on the scene. What? To become the client king of Rome over the reign of Judea. So he becomes the client king of the region of Judea. But surprisingly, he did not receive Ashkelon as part of this package. What? This did not stop him, though, from building all kinds of buildings. He built bathhouses, elaborate fountains, open squares and marketplaces. So the Hasmoneans didn't really know how to stay in their own backyard, apparently. That's what's fascinating about the Hasmonean kingdom in the Second Temple period. It's like Game of Thrones. It totally is. It's amazing. I recommend. Let's do one on that. When I get done with this, we'll hit some of that older history and we'll do some of that fun stuff. So now there has been a tradition that suggests that Herod was born in Ashkelon. And maybe you've heard that. I had never heard that. But I found out that was a tradition. Now, I'm thinking that was done in order to give him street cred in the Judean kingdom, because he was actually born in, where was he? Idumea, making him an Edomite. So he was a foreigner who became king of Judea, but married a Hasmonean queen, and then became Jewish. I don't even know if he was considered. I know he was the king of the Jews, but I don't even know if he was Jewish. Let me know in the comments. Now, eventually in 6 CE, the Herodian kingdom of Judea was partitioned into what were called tetrarchies. And Ashkelon's control and administration now came under the authority of the Syrian provincial governor. And it must also be noted that during the Great Jewish Revolt, which took place from 66 to 70 CE, which eventually led to the destruction of the Second Temple, that the city of Ashkelon maintained its loyalty to Rome. So that is Ashkelon in Roman times. Just like everything else in the region, it was probably a tumultuous place. Now, moving on to the Byzantine era, in the 6th century, the city of, are you ready for this? Ascalon was included during the creation of the Byzantine Madaba mosaic map, which is a segment of a floor mosaic in the church of St. George at Madaba, which is located in Madaba, Jordan. This means that to the Byzantines, Ashkelon had it maintained a significant level of importance to the empire. As it was a seaport, I'm sure it did. But it's also interesting because during the Byzantine era, several bishops from Ashkelon, referenced as Ascalon at the time, took part in the First Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. So this is Christianity. The First Council of Constantinople in 381, a synod held in Lydda in 415, the Robber Council of Ephesus in 449, the Council of Chalcedon in 451, and Ascalon was also represented at a synod in Jerusalem in 536. These were all big Christian get-togethers, religious get-togethers, in order to codify, if I'm not mistaken, the First Council of Jerusalem. Were they at the First Council of No, Nicaea was where they established the codification of the New Testament, all this stuff, church law, all that. So there were a bunch of bishops from Ashkelon, which is pretty spectacular. So in the new Christian religion of the time, as it was developing, Ashkelon had a big hand in that. Within the Roman Catholic Church, Ashkelon, or as I said, Ascalon, was what was called a residential bishopric, but is now today considered a titular see or a dead diocese, meaning, remember I told you it had all of that important status, significance. Well, now it doesn't. So as time wore on, it maintained less significance. But I'm going to tell you why coming in the next history. Hold on. Let me take another sip of coffee. Hold on. We are breezing through this pretty quick. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying the information and getting some insight into the history of these places and how deep and rich and far back it goes. Now, we move into the early Islamic era. The Byzantines would lose Ashkelon during the conquest of the Muslim Rashidun Caliphate, which existed from 633. Oh, no, this happened between 633 to 634. The Byzantines reoccupied Ashkelon during the Second Muslim Civil War of 680 to 692. But eventually the Umayyad Caliph, because there were four main caliphates, Abd al-Malik, who reigned from 685 to 705. So this caliph from the Umayyads reigned from 685 to 705 and recaptured the city, and he fortified it against further invasions. Now, under the Fatimid Caliphate, Ashkelon enjoyed prosperity, and they built a mint for coinage there, and they also built a naval base. So they had a couple of naval bases, apparently, and one of their main ones was at Ashkelon. So now we have a semblance of peace. Ashkelon is now, we've had peace in Ashkelon over time. The Hellenistic empires had peace. Who came after that? The Romans. That was a tumultuous time, but Ashkelon pretty much, since it maintained peace with Rome. So there's peace, someone takes it over, peace, someone takes it over, peace, someone takes it over. That's going to happen again because in come the Crusaders. And to the Crusaders, Ashkelon, to them, which was called Ascalon based on the Byzantine importance, remember it was a residential bishopric, was an ideal location strategically because it was a coastal city, but it was also part of the former Byzantine Empire. Now, in 1099, following the siege of Jerusalem, the Fatimid army was routed by Crusader legions at the Battle of Ascalon, but it wasn't captured because, and this happened in Akko too, but it wasn't captured because none of the leadership in the Crusaders could get their junk together, and there was so much infighting, so they never wound up capturing Ashkelon. Now, because of this, Ashkelon became a Fatimid frontier post and housed Fatimid reinforcements from Egypt, as well as a large number of refugees from areas conquered by the Crusaders. Now, then the Fatimids used Ashkelon to launch raids against the Crusader outposts and against the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Now, eventually, trade resumed between Ashkelon and the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, though the inhabitants of the city experienced frequent food and supply shortages. These food and supply shortages, though, were brought in by Fatimid army reinforcements from Egypt, and eventually the trade stopped again. So in 1150, the Fatimids fortified Ashkelon with 53 towers. But in 1153, after a 7-month Crusader siege, the city fell to King Baldwin the III of Jerusalem. And the Crusaders then added Ashkelon to the Kingdom of Jerusalem. It was in the county of Jaffa, and created the county of Jaffa and Ashkelon, making it one of the 4 major feudal regions of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Boom. There you go. In 1187, here we go again, Ashkelon was captured by Saladin during his conquest of the Crusader states following the Battle of Hattin. Now, following the Crusader conquest of Jerusalem, this is really interesting too. The Canaanite Jewish community's 6 elders from Ashkelon worked to assist in the freeing of ransomed Jews and holy relics from the Crusaders in Jerusalem. This is detailed in the letter of the Canaanite elders of Ashkelon, which details their efforts to free the ransomed Jews. Now, Canaanites are non-rabbinic Jews. They're Jews who only believe in the Torah. They do not believe in the Talmud. Or the Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud, all of it. They don't believe in that. Just to give you an idea of who the Canaanites are. Now, this population of a few hundred Jews, Canaanites and Rabbinites, remained in Ashkelon, but eventually they moved to Jerusalem when the city was destroyed in 1191. Here we go again, Ashkelon. We can't have anything pretty anywhere, right? This destruction came at the hands of Saladin, who destroyed the city because of its strategic importance to the Crusaders. It was then reestablished by King Richard I of England, the leader of the Crusade at that time, and a citadel was constructed on the city's ruins. The citadel was reconstructed and refortified by Richard, Earl of Cornwall in 1240, between 1240 to 1242, but again fell in 1247 during Asaliya Ayyub's war against the Crusaders, and Ashkelon was once again under Muslim rule. So, over a period of about 100 years, Ashkelon saw nothing but war during this period. And finally, the Mamluks, who came to power in 1250, eventually destroyed the city of Ashkelon. Mamluk Sultan Baybars in 1270 ordered the citadel and the harbor to be destroyed. Following this destruction, the city of Ashkelon was abandoned by its inhabitants and fell into disuse. So that is 1270 when Ashkelon was destroyed. So, during the Ottoman era, rule of the region of the area of Ashkelon continued to have inhabitants, and villages were found throughout the area, but the city continued to remain abandoned. So there was no one in Ashkelon during the Ottoman times. Ashkelon proper. Ottoman tax records can be found of inhabitants of a few villages in the area, and it was including a town called Majdal, which was noted by historians and tourists to the region towards the end of the 15th century. So it was noted towards the end of the 1400s, but it was destroyed in 1270. That's 200 years. Nothing. Boom. In 1596, Ottoman tax records show Majdal to be a large village of 559 Muslim households, making it the 7th most populous locality in Palestine, in the Palestine region, following Tzfat, Jerusalem, Gaza, Nablus, Hebron, and Kafr Kana. Sorry. Trouble reading it. So it was not, there weren't a lot of people in this area after this. After the Mamluk rule and the destruction of a lot of these places, there wasn't a lot there. The Ottomans didn't really invest that much in maintaining the region. In approximately 1870, an official Ottoman list of villages stated that Majdal was comprised of a total of 420 houses with a population of 1,175. It is thought that this count of the population only included men. But even then, still, the Ottomans didn't really do anything in the area of Ashkelon. Now, once we move on to Mandatory Palestine, which is the next phase, the population trend for villagers living villages in the Ashkelon region and Majdal specifically continue. There is some growth. So their first census in British Mandatory Palestine in 1930 found the number of inhabitants to be 6,166 Muslims and 41 Christians. So the population went up by like 5,000, which is a lot, but it's not a metropolis. By 1948, this population had grown in size to about 11,000, which is 4,000 more people. It's getting bigger. During the time of the British Mandate, the village of Majdal became specifically known for its weaving industry, with approximately 500 looms in the village in 1909. And in a 1920 report by the British government, it was estimated that there were 550 cotton looms in the town of Majdal, with an annual output worth around 30 to 40 million francs. Now, this success, though, waned, and eventually, because European imports were being brought in to mandatory Palestine. And eventually these looms disappeared, these businesses disappeared. And what we're seeing is that Majdal, during the time of the British Mandate, which is interesting. So the Ottomans didn't really invest anything into the redevelopment of Ashkelon or the area in general. And then Majdal kind of on its own started to build itself up. But as European imports came in, Majdal itself declined. And again, we're seeing not really much activity going on in Ashkelon. And that's where we're going to leave it. And after this, we'll go into, in the next episode, part 2, we will go into what happens after the Mandate and the modern city. All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed this history. It's a lot of fun. It's really enjoyable for me to research it and to bring it to you. So if you like it, hit the like button and the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get the brand new episodes as they come out. If you want to take us with you, you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and on Spotify. And as I said, this episode is brought to you by the 12 Cities in Israel Modern Hebrew Flashcards. And we've got our new one out. Numbers is out. So I have 2 of them on Amazon for the Kindle, and they're free for Kindle Unlimited. And we have Aleph, Bet, and Numbers. And they're great for learning all of them. And if you're rusty, they're also great for brushing up. I have a new update that I'm waiting for to come out for those of you who bought it, but everyone who does buy it will get this new update, and that is I've added contents, a table of contents to the Aleph Bet, and that way it's easier to maneuver throughout the flashcards. And the same type of table of contents is in the Numbers one. So come on, go there, get them. They will help you. They are awesome. All right, that's it. תודה רבה. להתראות ויאללה ביי. והיא איננה גם כשרחוקה היא ממני. זיכרונה עולה שוב בליבי הלילה, איך אותה רציתי כל חיי. ידי בידה ולאור ירח עוד יאיר לי כוכב. היא תבוא אליי ליבה פורח, כל ימי אותה אוהב. רק זאת ביקשתי, בידה אחזתי, היא כמו חלום שלא נגמר. רק זאת שאלתי, שליבי נתתי, הושעתי לפרח הנשאר. רק זאת שאלתי, שליבי נתתי, הושעתי לפרח הנשאר. ציפור נודדת מחפשת מולדת על ענף עץ בטוח התיישב